something interesting starts to happen when we enter the flow of life and we're finally seeing improvements in our reality, in ourselves, in our mind, in our body, whatever it may be. Our old conditioning and our old sort of narrative voice that's in our mind may start to creep up on us and present reasons for why we shouldn't be happy. Or rather, it'll present us with guilt for feeling happy and for feeling, abundant with energy and with this sort of flowing consciousness that we can embody when things are going right and we're living in the present moment. It's important to note that the voice that comes to you and that sounds like a voice of reason, the one that appears in the form of thoughts and starts to sort of bring you down into a spiral of negativity instead of allowing you to enjoy the happiness that you've earned and enjoy the happiness that you're blessed with and living in the present moment with that happiness. We start to fall for the same old tricks because we confuse a reasonable voice with that same fearful, anxious voice that kept us trapped a while ago and even may keep us trapped now if we haven't entered that sort of happy state yet. Just because it sounds like you, just because it's a reasonable, quote unquote, reasonable voice, and it makes a somewhat valid point, doesn't mean it's the truth. Because you can be happy and there can still be things to worry about. There may always be things that are worth worrying about on a sort of objective standpoint. There will always be things that are anxiety inducing, sadness inducing. It's about, can we be present when things are okay? And can we feel okay when things are okay? When dark times find us, when sadness is the emotion that we find ourselves in, there's no point in running away from it. There's no point in trying to make it anything else. But that's when events occur that make us sad, that force us to grieve, to mourn, whatever it may be. Reality will give us those opportunities to, in a way, suffer. We know suffering is a part of life, we can't escape it. But for the majority of life, things are probably rather neutral. And for also a good chunk, things are actually pretty optimistic. Things are pretty good. So it's about allowing ourselves to exist in that state of happiness, to exist in that state of flowing presence without that voice of guilt bringing us down and creating a bunch of reasons for why we don't deserve to be happy. A lot of people, they're not even stuck in the same hole that they were in. They're now stuck in allowing themselves to be happy, allowing themselves to have growth in their life. What's stopping the growth is the same association with that voice in their mind. If you're having a great day and all of a sudden you think about an event that you have 3 weeks from now that may be slightly anxiety inducing, that is the definition of suffering that which is not real. If there's anything standing on our way, if there's anything preventing us from enjoying our life, it's the fact that we can't be present with happiness without allowing that voice of guilt, that voice of fear and anxiety to bring us out of the present moment and force us down that same thought spiral that we're always falling down. There's two things we can do, right? There's a radical presence that we can embody, and we've talked about this practice before. It's simply bringing your awareness back to the present moment, not letting those thoughts, no matter what they say, no matter how they appear, not letting them take your awareness and you going down that spiral, that path of a thought and following whatever storyline it gives to you. The second thing we can do is cultivate ourselves in a way where we understand what is coming in the face of happiness. So when we do experience happiness, when we do experience satisfaction in our lives, we learn to understand that the brain's defense mechanism against this sort of uncommon state in the last few years is to send defense mechanisms in the form of guilt to bring us back to a baseline, quote unquote baseline of some form of anxiety. And the reason I say quote unquote baseline is because that's not an actual psychological, biological baseline. It's just the narrative baseline we've created for ourselves. We've learned to come to terms with our misery. We've learned to get comfortable in our suffering. So when we feel exuberant, when we feel excited and passionate, flowing and happy about life, it feels foreign, it feels weird, it feels off. And that's where most people get stuck because just because it feels different doesn't mean it's wrong. And we see this all the time. We see this in relationships as well. We see this in even like career settings. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. Good things are often going to appear a little bit awkward at first, maybe a little bit different. There's going to be an adjustment period. When you feel good about your life, there is no cosmic law looking to humble you and make you less happy. There is no scale, there is no balancing act looking to come to you and say, oh, you're 20% too happy. Let's throw in some guilt. Let's throw in some sadness. Let's throw something in their path that's going to make them feel sadness, that's going to make them feel darkness. No, it doesn't exist. We grow so accustomed to these storm clouds sort of hanging over our heads all the time that when we finally find some freedom, we think something is wrong because those clouds are no longer there. But that's what healing is. Equally so, healing is doing the hard work and the difficult work in the darkness, but it's also just as much allowing ourselves to exist in the light, allowing ourselves to exist in happiness. We talk about conditioning a lot, right? We're always conditioning our mind, whether for good or for bad, whether our environment, whether other people, our mind is always being conditioned. So when we finally break free of the conditioning, that old conditioning, the misery, the suffering, the anxiety, the fear-based conditioning, and we start to see real progress, like our brain is actually communicating with us in a different way. We're experiencing less anxiety overall, we're experiencing less fear because we're realizing that in these difficulties, there is opportunities for us to grow even more free of those fear and anxieties. Every fear is a portal to a reality where that fear doesn't exist, and the same goes for that anxiety. Because when we face them, we give them grace and we overcome them. Truly. When we face them, we show our mind that they are no longer the strong force that they once were. So when we break free of that old conditioning is going to try to find a way to reestablish itself. Not with any sort of menace and not with any bad intentions. It's just the brain making sure of what you want. When you start to feel good, free, and happy, that old conditioning is going to disguise itself as a reasonable voice. And you may be under the impression that reasonable voice is coming to you to warn you and to sort of tell you to ground yourself and come back to baseline. But there is no limitations on the flow of energy. There is no limitations to our happiness. I think we see this a lot in society as well. It's whenever we see someone excited and positive and almost like a child, we almost assume, are they on drugs or are they crazy or whatever it may be? And that's because we've created a world where childlike joy and even playfulness is seen as something foreign and something not common. But all you have to do is break the old mold that the mind has found a comfortable environment in. That's all you have to do. You can condition yourself to be more free, more happy over and over and over. And once you break through a little bit, don't you wonder, aren't you curious how far you can take it? If the fact of the matter exists that you can condition your mind in any sort of way for good or for bad, aren't you curious about how far you can take this neuroplastic journey? Because me, I am extremely curious. How free can I truly be? How happy can I truly be? How at peace in difficult environments can I truly be? The more I face the difficult things in my life, how much freedom can I create simply from facing those difficult challenges? And the answer, I suspect, is that reality can be much, much greater than we ever expected. Our life, in any way we imagine, in any way we dream of, it can be even better. The highest you can ever imagine for yourself, the most maxed out potential, your dream reality, it can be even better. Not saying it needs to be in form of any in the form of any sort of materialistic way, but in terms of your embodiment, in terms of maybe the deep relationships that you are involved in and the purposeful work that you find yourself involved in. Things can be so much greater, so much deeper, so much realer from an emotional satisfactional standpoint. And we can't wrap our heads around that because we're so used to being told, do this, follow this path, then this will happen. And if you do this, you'll get this reward, and it's a safe opportunity, it's a safe job, whatever it may be. Those things aren't wrong. Safety is an important part of life. But when we have some sort of built in safety and all that we're left with is the conditioning of our minds, that's how you become the creator of your reality. It's not necessarily by advanced manifestation techniques, but really conditioning ourselves to continuously exist in a state of being where we are truly satisfied with life. How many times in your life can you truly have said that you are satisfied? You are no longer seeking anyone or anything or any place. Rather than where you are right now, you are satisfied. It's a tough angle to see things from because it forces us to acknowledge two different things. Number one, what is emotionally standing in the way of our happiness, such as anxiety or maybe fear? And number two, what are we dissatisfied with materially in our life? Because that also plays a picture. If we're not where we want to be in life, maybe rightfully so, we should put on our, big boy boots and make a difference in our life practically. Put ourselves out there more, leave our comfort zone more. So those are the two things practically we can look at. Everything else is completely the conditioning and allowing ourselves to exist in that state. It's not being pulled in by that guilt. It's not being pulled in by that darkness and allowing ourselves to be happy. There is no law in the universe that puts a limit or cap on your happiness. You need to understand that fundamentally. There is no cap, there is no limit to the blessings. You can be like water, like a flow of energy. Things just happen for you. So let's go back to that other point. When what's standing in our way is fear and anxiety, then the mission is just getting to that happy point. Because before we feel the guilt of happiness, we have to actually get to that happy point. I talk about this a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But it is about facing those fears and anxieties and tackling them and running through them. Once those things are out of the way, you prove to yourself that whatever the physical environment presents to you, whatever the present moment, whatever you encounter while living life, you will handle that from a state of being standpoint and from not running and not living in an avoidant way standpoint. So that's out of the way. Next, the physical standpoint. We cannot mistake a lack of movement in life with a lack of emotional progress. Because I do think the two things are intertwined. There will be times in our life maybe when we need to take a step back from the motions of life to heal and to maybe grieve or whatever, deal with difficult emotions that we may encounter. But for the most part, we need to stay in movement. We need to be making differences in physical reality because I'm not a big believer in staying still and embodying stillness from a physical opportunities in our life standpoint. I'm more of a embody stillness within so that that frame of mind, that state of being and that peace and happiness that we're looking for, we carry it with us everywhere and not just when we're in our room meditating. If there's going to be any affirmation that you can write down and repeat to yourself, you can say that there is no limit to your happiness. There is no limit to my happiness. You can write it again and again and again. There is no force looking to humble me. There is no force. There is no force trying to even the scales. There is no force trying to up the trying to up the score of darkness in our life. There isn't. And you will see that in your life, very rarely is it the events that cause you to spiral back into misery and suffering, but rather your own overthinking, your own anxiety, and your own fear. The events in our life and what's going to come of our life when we finally allow ourselves to be free and embody this happiness, it's going to be something you've never experienced before. Or maybe you have. Maybe you were a kid, or maybe you were a lot younger when you actually experienced that sort of flowing energy. But get used to it, expect it. And when it comes, when it's there, realize there's nothing standing in your way except for your own old conditioning, the way your mind used to operate. And it's even your mind isn't coming to humble you, it's not coming to bring you down. It's coming to make sure that the old way you used to think, the old way you used to exist, is something you no longer want to attach yourself to. And when you repeat the decision to not engage with that old conditioning, to not exist in that old state of mind, your brain will start to accept it. It'll say, okay, I get it now. The more you answer and the more you give the more you give it that answer of, I want to exist in this state of being and not this one, so I'm not going to engage with the theatrics of that old conditioning, the more your brain starts to understand. And the more it will support your flowing, abundant energy and happiness. We shouldn't attach ourselves to happiness as the sort of end goal. Happiness is fleeting. That's why I say more flowing energy, because when you're sitting in your room just existing, I don't know if I would call that happiness. I think I would call it rather satisfaction. You know, I don't put any rules on seeking in my life. When my heart desires something, I like to examine the desire rather than cut it off right away as an excuse for not being happy, because possibly that intrinsic desire that we want to experience externally is something that is going to push us even further within and allow us to know ourselves on an even deeper level. So, in summary, when you are existing in happiness, and if you feel as though your mind won't let you be happy, all you have to do is the same meditative practice of not engaging with that quote unquote reasonable guilty voice. It's nothing complicated. Don't engage with it. It has no merit. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. I'll be putting out videos like this almost every day, to be honest. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you for the support. You can find me on Kinzer MB on all platforms. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.